Hi, on behalf of Spokane Community College and the Hagen Center for the Humanities, I would like to welcome all of you to today's event. We welcome you to collectively sit down together, all of us at this same table, to engage in dialogue about so many things, but especially about our shared humanity. For this evening's event, we sincerely welcome and encourage audience participation. And we are honored to acknowledge that the community colleges of Spokane and our main campuses for Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College are located on the traditional and sacred homelands of the Spokane tribe. We also provide services in a region that includes the traditional and sacred homelands of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation and the Kalispel tribe. We pay our respect to tribal elders, both past and present, as well as to all Indigenous people today. This land holds their cultural DNA, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands. We give thanks to the legacy of the original people and their descendants and pledge to honor their stewardship and their values. Tonight, we welcome Naomi Shihab Nye. She describes herself as a wandering poet. She has spent more than 40 years traveling the country and the world to lead writing workshops and to inspire students of all ages. She was born to a Palestinian father and an American mother and grew up in St. Louis, Jerusalem, and San Antonio. Drawing on her Palestinian-American heritage, the cultural diversity of her home in Texas, and her experiences traveling in Asia, Europe, Canada, Mexico, and the Middle East, she uses her writing to attest to our shared humanity. She is the author and or editor of more than 30 volumes. Her books of poetry for adults and children include 19 Varieties of Gazelle, Poems of the Middle East, Amaze Me, Poems for Girls, Red Suitcase, Words Under the Words, Fuel, Transfer, You and Yours, a best-selling poetry book of 2006, Mint Snowball, Voices in the Air, Poems for Listeners, Come With Me, Poems for a Journey, Honeybee, The Tiny Journalist, Castaway, Poems for Our Time, and Everything Comes Next, collected in new poems. Her collections of essays include Never in a Hurry, and I'll Ask You 3 Times, Are You Okay? Tales of Driving and Being Driven. Her fiction books for young people include Habibi, Going, There Is No Long Distance Now, and The Turtle of Oman. The Turtle of Oman was chosen as a Horn Best Book of 2014, a 2015 notable children's book by the American Library Association, and was awarded the 2015 Middle East Book Award for Youth Literature. Her picture books include Baby Radar, City Secrets, and Famous. She has also edited 9 poetry anthologies, including I Feel a Little Jumpy Around You, Time You Let Me In, This Same Sky, The Space Between Our Footsteps, and What Have You Lost? Her next book will be The Turtle of Michigan, a sequel to The Turtle of Oman. She is the professor of creative writing, poetry at Texas State University. A number of our faculty had the privilege of getting to spend some time with her today in a poetry workshop, and I think we are in for a wonderful evening tonight. Please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Naomi Shihab Nye.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for that very warm welcome. Good evening, Spokane. It's an honor to be with you. I am a fan of Spokane Community College and the Hagen Humanities Center from the past, from having been there in the real flesh, and I feel lucky to be there virtually with you all tonight. I really enjoyed being with your faculty this afternoon, or your circle there, and I also enjoyed afterwards taking a look at what Amy Anderson sent me, the Speak Out Communications Club video of 3rd graders of Spokane sharing their poems at a fantastic gathering, Speak Out gathering. And I just want to celebrate you all for having that initiative, for encouraging those beautiful children to write as wonderfully and freely as they are. I watched it twice because I liked it so much, and I was very moved by what the adults said as well as the children. And thanks to Derek Mullins and all the people who have created this beautiful, beautiful place for poetry in Spokane. As I did mention this afternoon, I was so excited when I came to Spokane and stayed in the gorgeous historic Davenport Hotel to find out that one of my childhood heroes, someone I was quite intrigued by, Vachel Lindsay, the poet, had lived in the Davenport Hotel for a few years. And some kind people gave me books of Lindsay's that I had never seen before. And I wanted to read just a small paragraph from Vachel Lindsay to celebrate your place, your beautiful place in our country, in the world. And it's a time when any of us who are watching the news are feeling so grieved for people who have to leave the place they love, who are being devastated in their neighborhoods. And I made the mistake of watching the news with my husband for an hour before gathering with you here. And it is shocking how much cruelty abounds in the world. And I think we need very, very much to keep speaking up about humanity and care and respect for our places. So this is something Vachel Lindsay wrote in one of his newspaper columns a long time ago in Spokane. In the casual way of a lumberjack, I want to talk about Spokane wheat and wildflowers, wild and zoo animals, and deep woods. I want to discuss with an easy swing lakes, mountains, and rivers as they make up the scenery here. I want to talk about bridges and viaducts, orchards, and Johnny Appleseed. I would like to talk about Indians, or as we would say now, indigenous peoples, native peoples, and the Indian influence on the West-going imagination. I want to include in my song waterfalls, railroads, high roads, footpaths, and rabbit tracks. I would like to touch on the wildernesses of the past and the national parks of tomorrow. Also the plain, everyday parks. In this, our Xanadu as an insider and as an outsider. I expect to discuss in a casual way some things suggested by that great lumberjack of the past, Abraham Lincoln. He is the saint. Well, that people go to Spain and go to Lincoln's to read that this afternoon. That desire, that impulse to tell, to celebrate Spokane, the place he had adopted as his home where he would meet his wife and so forth. So cheers to all of you. And I know that tonight we are doing what everyone in the world is doing who cares about civility and grace and justice and family, just praying for a ceasefire, an end to devastation. A woman I don't know named Corey Feiner in Brooklyn, New York, sent me a poem last week and said, feel free to quote this anywhere you go. And the title of the poem was, What if there was a day with no fighting? And that's what I think everybody dreams of and hopes for, who comes from a region of conflict or who lives in any kind of peril. So together we hold many people in our hearts tonight. And I have picked a few poems with this current moment in mind, as well as a few others. And also, my new friend Gwen had kindly mentioned that I just might say, what poetry is to me at the beginning tonight, what it is. And I think of it as the most compact, immediate genre of writing, often in a more vertical than horizontal form, although we know there were many poets such as Walt Whitman, Carl Sandburg, Allen Ginsberg, who wrote very long narrative lines that almost look like prose on the page. And it's all styles, all topics. As I saw in the third grader video today, it's accessible by all people in some way or another. It's a universal language. I think of poetry, as Rita Dove, our great poet, once said, as being the most immediate, intimate genre in which we are able to convey something, whether a description, an experience, an emotional, a perception, perspective, or a gathering of many such threads and elements into a very compact, immediate form. Poetry often does not involve thesis sentences or explanations, or the moral of the story is at the end, such as the Aesop's Fables books I grew up with as a kid. But it just puts something out there in an imagistic or lyrical way of blessing and hopefully meaning. And I know many people talk about, well, I don't like all poems. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to like all foods. You don't have to like all music, but find some poems you like, and I think you'll be the better for it. And I love anthologies for that reason, that you could fan through an anthology and maybe fall in love with 5 or 10 poems out of 100. And that would be fine. That would be legitimate. And I think poets would do that too. And then you might have 30 that you like, and 12 that are completely mysterious. But it is a very subjective genre. And I think it's a necessary one because it comes from the heart and soul in an immediate way that's a little bit different than the way a novel is formed or any other genre. So I do think that we are poets, as William Stafford used to say, we are poets when we're very little children. If any of you have listened to 2- and 3-year-old children speak, make metaphor without realizing it, you see they're poets. We're poets to start out with. And Stafford used to say, some of us just try to keep up the habit. And I think that's true. And I think we all have a poetry channel in our brains, which is the place where we and savor and focus and wander in our minds. Poetry does a lot of things, but I think it's very, very essential. Gwen, is that a decent answer?
It is a more than decent answer, and I appreciate you framing it that way. And you have just said so many wonderful things about poetry, because I think, for people who are outsiders to poetry,
right,
they look at it as something that has rhyme and meter and that is really hard to understand because of the use of metaphor. But I think that you really brought that down to earth, that poetry is about feelings and perception, and that is the most important thing. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. And of course, rhyme and meter are some things that are often taught when we're little, because children like nursery rhymes, they like bouncy kind of rhythmic things. And that is only one form and fashion of poetry. It hasn't
Right.
the most enduring one. It isn't the most historic one, but it is a way that people can write. And there are all sorts of things we can do with sound and rhythm that are not quite so predictable or easy to analyze. But I always think that poetry really wants to help us too. Poetry is kind of little leverage it opens doors and windows in our minds. It wants to show us things. And it's not something you learn and master once and for all. It's just it's a continual process of discovery. I often also think, like, I am no authority on jazz, but I love jazz, and I like to have it playing. I like to be around it. I couldn't get up and give a talk about it, but I like to read about it. And, you don't have to be a master of something to participate in it and appreciate it. So enjoy poetry, pass it on. It's small enough you can write it on little cards like we do in Poetry in a Pocket Day in April and share it with other people. And I think it's also fine to like parts of poems. I remember feeling that way about Vachel Lindsay poems when I was a child. Sometimes there'd be one of his poems where I really loved one stanza in the poem, but I wasn't sure about the entire poem. I didn't quite understand it. And I think that's fine. You don't have to always take a poem as a whole. So thank you for inviting me to even mention that. And so I'll read this. Speaking of metaphor, I've always been very disturbed by game metaphors being applied to war. And I have heard this over and over again through my life. So this poem was started by seeing a photograph by Alan Pogue of Austin, Texas, and he had taken it of a young girl in Iraq who had had her arm blown off by a grenade. It is not a game. It was never a game. It was a girl's arm, the right one, that held a pencil. She liked her arm. It was a small stone house with an iron terrace, flower pot beside the door. People passing, loaves of bread, little plans the size of a thought, dropping off something you borrowed, buying a small sack of za'atar. It was a hand with fingers dipping the scoop into the barrel. I will not live this way, said a woman with a baby on her hip, but she was where she was. These men do not represent me, said the teacher with her students in pressed blue smocks. They had sharpened their pencils, desks lined in a simple room. It was school, numbers on a page, a radiant sky with clouds. In the old days, you felt happy to see it. No one wanted anything to drop out of it except rain. Where was rain? It was not a game. It was unbelievable sorrow and fear. A hand that a mother held, a pocket, a glass. It was not war. It was people. We had gone nowhere in a million years. And seeing all the children that keep arriving on these news reports, so beautiful as all children anywhere. I thought of this poem. Before I was a Gazan, I was a boy, and my homework was missing. Paper with numbers on it, stacked and lined. I was looking for my piece of paper, proud of this plus that, then multiplied, not remembering if I had left it on the table after showing to my uncle or the shelf after combing my hair. But it was still somewhere, and I was going to find it and turn it in. Make my teacher happy. Make her say my name to the whole class before everything got subtracted in a minute. Even my uncle, even my teacher, even the best math student and his baby sister who couldn't talk yet. And now I would do anything for a problem I could solve. Those two poems come from Everything Comes Next, Collected and New Poems. And I'll read a couple from The Tiny Journalist, which is a book that pays homage to a young Palestinian girl who, at the age of 7 and 8, began filming what happened in her West Bank town of Palestine. And I don't know her personally, but I started watching her videos. I joined Facebook, in fact, so that I could watch her videos. And I just felt that she was such an incredibly brave child who was willing to speak up, speak out. And she said, people don't know what is happening here. I have to show these images. So I wrote a whole book of poems, kind of layered with many voices, her voice, my father's voice, my voice. I lived there as a teenager, my grandmother's voice, who was made a refugee in 1948 and lived till the age of 106. And so I would hope that this whole book is a testament toward peace, toward a dream of peace that I think many idealistic young activists carry in all countries. So in this poem, I'm speaking as the moon, though very presumptuous, but moon over Gaza. I am lonely for my friends. They liked me, trusted my coming. I think they looked up at me more than other people do. I, who have been staring down so long, see no reason for the sorrows humans make. I dislike the scuffle of bombs blasting very much. It blocks my view. A landscape of grieving feels different afterwards. Different sheen from a simple desert, rubble of walls, silent children who once said my name like a prayer. Sometimes I am bigger than a golden plate, a giant coin, and everyone gasps. Maybe it is wrong that I am so calm. And a common question kids ask me when I'm in the Middle East. Before COVID, I tried to be there every year working in different schools in different countries, was, since they find out I live in Texas now, if I have ever seen an armadillo. They are fascinated by the armadillo and its tiny dinosaur-like appearance. And then I found a very ancient book in a Middle Eastern school library that featured an armadillo on the very first page. And the book had been fingered a lot. So this is, the title of the book was Exotic Animals, Book for Children. Armadillo means little armored one. Some of us become this to survive in our own countries. I would like to see an armadillo crossing the road. Our armor is invisible. It polishes itself. We might have preferred to be a softer animal, wouldn't you? With fur and delicate paws, like an African striped grass mouse, also known as zebra mouse. No explosions. To enjoy fireworks, you would have to have lived a different kind of life. And this is for so many people right now. Mediterranean blue. If you are the child of a refugee, you do not sleep easily when they are crossing the sea on small rafts, and you know they can't swim. My father couldn't swim either. He swam through sorrow, though, and made it to the other side on a ship, pitching his old clothes overboard at landing, then tried to be happy, make a new life. But something inside him was always paddling home, clinging to anything that floated, a story, a food, or face. They are the bravest people on earth right now. Don't dare look down on them. each mind a universe swirling as many details as yours, as much love for a humble place. Now the shirt is torn, the sea too wide for comfort, and nowhere to receive a letter for a very long time. And if we can reach out a hand, we better. I send that one out tonight to all the people in so many countries surrounding Ukraine who are taking people in, welcoming them, feeding them, that incredible chef, Jose Andres, and all of his teams, and all the regular families who are saying, come here, we'll give you a place to sleep. It's such a hard time for everybody. I really feel, as an older adult now, shocked that war is still committed in such a way as we have seen not only at this moment, but in all the years just that I've been living. It's very shocking how these cycles get repeated. So I think we need a moment of a lighter poem here. And I think the state of Washington has the best state motto of all states. Now, most people don't know a lot about state mottos. I was sent a map as a gift a few years ago that had a very large depiction of the United States, and each state was simply identified with its state motto, not its name. And I realized then I didn't even know what the state motto of Texas was, where I live. And I wrote this poem, and it was printed in I think it was the New York University Literary Magazine, had written me asking for a poem. Right at the moment I sort of finished this, I didn't think much of it. I sent it to them. And this is why I always urge people to send their work out. Magical things can happen. You never know what can happen with a poem. I have had the last stanza of a poem printed on a dumpster in Times Square in New York City for a few years now. And many people have taken pictures of it and mentioned it to me. It was part of some public art initiative in New York City. I really like that. I've written an entire book about trash. So I like having a stanza of a poem on a dumpster. But this poem ended up going on tour with the musician Bono and U2, his band, and it scrolled on a big screen behind him, along with another poem of mine called Kindness, during the concerts, or right before the concerts started. And that was just incredible to me. It's like something you never think about. A poem could go to all these concerts with a singer you've been listening to for years. I couldn't believe it. Well, the poem's called United, and it touches me that a person from Ireland would even select this poem to travel with. When sleepless, it's helpful to meditate on mottos of the states. South Carolina, while I breathe, I hope. Perhaps this could be the new flag on the empty flagpole. Or I direct from Maine. Why? Because Maine gets the first sunrise? How bossy, Maine. In Arkansas, the people rule. Lucky you. Kansas, to the stars through difficulties. Clackety wagon wheels, long land, and the droning press of heat. Cool stars, relief. Idaho, let it be perpetual. Now this is strange. Idaho, what is your it? Who chose these lines? How many contenders? What would my motto be tonight in tangled sheets? Texas, friendship, now boasts the open carry law. Wisconsin, where my mother's parents are buried, chose forward. Washington, is wisest by and by. New Mexico, it grows as it goes. Now this is scary, two dangling its. This does not represent that glorious place. West Virginia, mountaineers are always free. Really? Oklahoma must be tired. Labor conquers all things. Oklahoma, get together with Nevada, who chose only industry as motto. I think of Nevada as a playground, or mostly empty. How wrong we are about one another. For Alaska to pick north to the future seems odd. Where else are they going? And a poem called Gratitude Pillow, which quotes Maya Angelou at the top. She wrote, "Let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel." I had never known until after she died, and I read a story about her, that she had the particular job that it mentions in this poem. Maya loved the jingle of the massive key ring carried by cable car conductors. First woman in the San Francisco trolley uniform. She liked the shiny buttons on the jacket, appreciated the swoops and dips of the routes, sharp curves, corners, bustling avenues. Clinking coin dispenser latched to her belt. She'd be a conductor all her life. Write and talk, take people everywhere, out of their tight little rooms. And if anyone told her they were going to Gloomy Street, she'd say, "What? Lift those eyes. Take a look at the sea to your right. Buildings full of mysteries, schools crackling with joy, open porches. Watch the world whirl by. All we are given without having to own. And shake that gloom right out of your system. Hope is the only drink you need to be drinking. Jingle, jingle, step right up." Maya was such a force as a human and as a writer, as a presenter. Well, also, I'd like to just say a word for the past 2 strange years we've lived through. And many of us have witnessed a lot of suffering, a lot of illness in our own circles. My deepest condolences if loved ones in your circle have died or have suffered greatly. I read this poem for this strange time in history we've all been living through together. Healing. Lean into it, the breeze suggests. Dig deeper, says the dirt. Sometimes the hurt you feel means you're standing in the wrong place. Move over. This hurt wasn't meant for people. It wasn't meant to land anywhere. It's the cosmic ache of the atmosphere drifting through, the give and take, push, pull, flow. You know when it passes, no claiming necessary, the lift of the air. Hear the held note, like the quiet humming an orchestra tunes to. That's for you. Ever since childhood, I used to, I did used to play the violin, so I was in an orchestra where we would tune to the A. But but also just think that you could get very quiet anywhere, which we've all had more time to do in the past 2 years, and hold your own note, like hold the quietude within you. Some people would call it meditating, sitting. Some people would just call it staring, daydreaming, calming down, breathing, taking a deep breath. But I was very helped by that knowledge as a child, that when things felt overwhelming, you could do that and feel better in a few minutes. So I just put that out there because I think we do need it when we grow up even more. And someone else, I'll just read this one and then see if we should visit Gwen, whatever we'd like to talk about. This poem, I know I wrote it. I don't know where it was printed. Someone else posted it and linked it to me on Instagram today. That's kind of a funny thing. You send poems out sometimes, you don't even remember how or where, but it came back to me today with a whole different time in it, thinking about a different scene. It's called Your Beauty is Overwhelming. Taking to the streets, taking a risk, marching with placards, fleeing, objecting, wearing white shirts or puffy winter coats. On the other side of the world, you can't hear us cheering for you. We can't hear the conversations in your kitchens. What else are people supposed to do with voices but use them? Use them? Use them? Well, thank you for listening to me. And Gwen and I will have a conversation, or if any of you have any questions to send, I'm happy to hear them.
Naomi, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You are a force of nature in all of the best ways. And I feel like it's just really a great blessing that you're here with us.
Well, Gwen, my heart goes out to you in gratitude for such a generous thing. And I feel the same about you, getting to be with you in your circle today. It was very, very helpful.
It has been a good day. So, you know, I think our audience would probably like to hear from you a little bit about why you think that you talked about what your definition of poetry was earlier. And earlier today, you talked about how passing poetry is an important act. And I would like to hear you talk a little bit more, or talk with me a little bit more about why poetry is important in the world today.
Well, I think poetry is sort of the opposite of war because it's a very humanizing experience. It cherishes, it respects, it notices the tiniest details. You know, something doesn't have to be headline news to turn up in a poem. It could be the smallest first flower growing at your back step that no one has seen but you. It could be, you know, a random twig that you find while you're out walking, and for some reason it speaks to you in that moment. It could be writing down anecdotes that you remember and cherish about someone who has recently died. I've been doing this a lot for the past months, and that feeling of noticing that we are alive and what makes us alive, what makes us who we are, is, I think, an essentially humanizing activity. And that's why I always like to speak in any conjunction with a humanities center, because I just love the word humanity and humanities. That's what we are about. Those of us who have worked with arts or education or literature, text, all these wonderful things all these years. And we believe in it. We believe that by sharing human story, we connect to one another. We do not believe we are, you know, just random wisps of dust, not mattering all by ourselves, you know, in great sorrow because the world is such a mess. We want to believe better, other, smaller, dearer things. So I think we need poetry for that reason. You know, poetry is a slow art too. Technology is terrific for poetry because you can transmit poems, boom, boom. Like I mentioned, my own poem, so-called own, I don't really feel like I own things, but coming back to me through Instagram today. And the only reason I saw it was because they were, hashtagging my Instagram handle. So I just think that we need to send voices out. Somebody may find them, may pick them up in a time when they are useful to them. I have been helped by poetry every day of my life. I honestly feel that in some way or another. And it is impossible to imagine, what it would be like not to pause with a sentence or hold a phrase or just delight in a turn of description.
Yes.
That is so lovely, Where did I write that down? One of the third graders, I didn't get a name on this child. One of the Spokane third graders had a poem that was these two lines: "You're perfect just the way you are. Make new trees grow." And I thought, that's like genius.
That's
That
amazing.
is so great. Make new trees grow. Like the acknowledgement that you're okay, you're a human being, you're okay, you're perfect, whoever you are. Make new trees grow. That's your job. And you live in a place of such gorgeous landscape and trees and everything. I just was so moved by that. I had to go, rewatch it. It was so touching. So cheers to that young poet.
Yes.
Yes.
Cheers to the poets. Before I ask the next question, I do want to share with our audience that if you are not logged in on social media, but you are just watching on YouTube, if you have questions, you can email them to me and I will ask our speaker tonight. The email address is scc.hagencenter, HAGANCENTER, at scc.spokane.edu. So it's one more time, scc.hagencenter at scc.spokane.edu. And I will forward your questions to our speaker. Naomi, I'm wondering about how your Palestinian heritage figures into the work that you do. I've heard that tonight in a subtle way, but I would love to hear you speak to that.
Well, I loved my father very, very much, and he to me was a representative of voice. He was a journalist, so he wrote stories all his life. He was completely fluent in two languages. He was a journalist in Arabic and English both. He started out as a radio journalist for the BBC when he was 14, which always impressed me. And I just, when I lived in Palestine myself and went to two different high schools during my time there and got to know the extended family, you realize what DNA is, how you feel so bonded with place, people. It was a hard time to be living in a different country if you've started out in the United States, being in high school. And all my life, though, I've gone back to that essence of culture and the sorrow that is peculiarly Palestinian, but not only Palestinian, because it's the sorrow of displacement or disrespect, like you live there, but we want you to be something else, or we want you to get out of there so we could be there, or, just all kinds of disrespect.
Right.
And they're not the only people who've suffered that, as we see in the world right now, as we always see, unfortunately. But I love the Palestinian spirit and culture and belief in home. And I think home has been a very important part of my sensibility, trying to love whatever home I'm in and make kids feel more joy in their own homes through their own writing, like realizing they're living in the midst of material all the time. So being half Palestinian and being an advocate for justice in the region has definitely marked my life greatly, and I cherish it, and I dream of a better day for everyone. And I thoroughly believe, completely believe, as did my father, that it could happen, and that Arab people and Jewish people are more similar than they are dissimilar. And my father always thought if the people on the ground, the regular people living there, had been allowed to solve it themselves, they would have. But if a lot of weapons hadn't been funneled in from hither and yon, in the case of Israel, Palestine, a lot from the United States. So
Sure.
that's thrown off the balance over many, many years. But I personally know plenty of Jewish people who would like to have more of an equanimity amongst peoples.
When did you know, or at what point did you start to identify yourself as a poet?
I started writing poems when I was 6. I knew what they were because my mom and teacher and community librarian read them to kids. And by the time I was 7, I started sending poems to magazines because the school librarian told me I could do that. And so I do think by the age of 7, I was thinking of myself as a poet. And I was not worried, by the way, about rejection. The idea of a poem not being printed after you sent it out, that didn't bother me in the least. Like, who cares? Send it somewhere else. And I've always felt that way about, don't worry too much about sharing your work. I guess it's easier if you start earlier.
A couple questions for our audience. Regarding the writing process. Okay, wait a minute, let me back up. Thank you for helping to make poetry feel so accessible and vital.
Thank you.
And regarding the writing process, do you have any suggestions for keeping the writing process alive when your writing feels dry or dull, especially for big projects like maybe a novel?
Sure.
Part of the challenge might be sheer stamina, part belief in your own writing or voice.
Sure. Yes, I hear that question. I think writing novels is much harder than writing poetry. And I've only written novels for kids, but it's much harder because you have to keep things going, and it's longer, and you have to keep your attention going. I think the way to keep a revitalized sense of writing ongoing in your life, whatever else you're writing and doing, is just to get in the habit of small increments of writing time every day, if you can, if you possibly can. And don't beat yourself up if you miss a day. But I think having a ritualistic time and place to do it can be very helpful. In the mornings, I like to go to my back table, like a food table, and it's empty, and just work on that table for a while before doing anything else. I like to work when it's still dark in the morning, see the light come up. That's just my beautiful time to work in. But having the ritual of doing it makes it happen better. And also having some little strategies you use with your own writing. I mean, you can develop your own. William Stafford had kind of a 4-part strategy he used every morning. I like to write questions to kind of get started. What questions do I wake up with? Am I worrying about something for that day? Am I worrying about something from yesterday? Am I over caring about something right this minute? So often just writing a quick list of questions will get the water flowing there. And it's helpful if you do this because you always have things ongoing. Like you can fan back a few pages and see something you scribbled a few days ago, and suddenly a term I used during the workshop was suddenly it's shimmering for you. It's giving you something back. It seems more interesting than it seemed even when you wrote it, or it's connecting now to something else in your mind. And, I always wonder, how do people think they're going to connect things if they don't put down the raw material? Allow yourself to write freely and brazenly, take up the whole page. even if you're only going to be writing for 10 minutes, just give yourself that space, that luxury to do it. And I guarantee that you start just feeling more fluid. And of course, you could be doing it at a different time of day entirely. Sometimes I like writing on different materials. Like my husband is a photographer, and he often cuts off the white matting that people use around photographs. And I find like a whole heap of those in the trash can. And I love them as my writing paper, because they're long, they're skinny and long. And I find I just write really wildly and freely when I use them, because to begin with, they were in the trash. So there's nothing precious about it. Other days I like to write in different notebooks. I think it's nice. We talked to some people today who had more than one notebook. I always have at least 3 going, one small, one bigger page, one with no lines, because you just feel like writing in different things. And then when you are working on a project, often that initial writing acts as sort of getting the spring flowing, and then you can switch over to your project and have more velocity working on it. That's what I find anyway. I usually don't type things into the computer for a while. I just I still physically like the handwritten text feeling. But if you like to write in the computer, do it, whatever you like.
Do you prefer a pencil or a pen?
Well, I do both. I use both. I always have both with me. And I usually write in both every morning. That's a little odd too. But the different tools and the different things you write on, they kind of give you different things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have a candle on the table because it's dark still in the room. I like that. Cup of coffee.
All those things.
Yeah.
So this is a little out of left field, but one of the things I've been considering lately, because I was a student of literature, is that I believe that we are in a moment right now in our history that is not unlike 100 years ago. And I think of the emergence of the modernists, et cetera, and the things that they were trying to address. And they were, coming out of a pandemic, a world war, getting ready to face another world war that they probably didn't anticipate. And I sometimes sort of see us in that same moment of history. Regardless of that, regardless of my analysis there, it does seem that we are in a moment. And I wonder what it is like to be someone like you who I consider to be an activist writer and a good student of history and someone who cares. What is it like to be you right now? Like, what is the weight that you bear? And how does that work itself out in your writing and your practice?
Wow, you are very flattering in that question, and thank you for putting me in any kind of.
I know it's a tough question. I'm sorry.
In that question, no, but I'm very interested in the parallel you're making, and I think it's true that we are there. There are a lot of resonances with 100 years ago. What we're doing right now, and we like to think that we're so modern and so advanced, and here's a war going on that's just as Stone Age as war ever was. So how great are we after all? And here's a pandemic that so many people died in, and many of our current people preferred to fight over and reject the suggestions versus taking community into account. I did write the model poem for the Dear Vaccine book, which is coming out any moment. And it's a wonderful anthology, a worldwide anthology. I hope some of you will see it from Kent State University Press. But I think we just have to try with all of our might to be truth tellers in whatever moment we're in. And whether it's, we all respond to different things too. I'm very good friends with many people who are super strong environmental writers and writing about, issues of climate and issues of, the ice sheets of Antarctica and the Arctic and just all these different things, who are very earth-oriented in their perspectives. That's so important now. I'm also friends with many super activists, like people who write about politics a lot. And it is definitely a time of great advocating, for many things, because I think we're in a lot of jeopardy from all directions. I completely admire Greta Thunberg, by the way. Talk about using your voice.
Yes.
She's not afraid to. And we need to be that brave. And we need to keep writing not only about our, personal particulars that matter to us and make us human beings, but, the wider realm. I don't think those are oppositional content areas. I think, because we love our lives, we want people to get to continue to have lovely lives and know one another and, not be stricken by our cities being inundated and everything else bad that could happen. So it's a time. We have technology. How are we going to use it? Are we going to band together? And I think many people are doing this to, gain greater power on certain issues and certain topics. It's a delicate time. Yes, I hear what you're saying. It's interesting, isn't it, too? Because, like, when I was a kid, I thought war was over. I thought that's it. We've had the last war, World War II. I heard about it, from my grandparents, and I thought, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. But it's a bit scarier now, and still we're facing some recycled problems, issues.
Thank you. Would you like to share one more poem with us tonight?
Well, I would love to, and I want to thank you, Gwen, for your hospitality and your kindness to me, and just say to everyone there, I wish you good days and health and strength and a feeling of voices being important. I hope that we can meet again in real life.
I hope so too.
I
Well,
hope so.
we would all hope that. Yes, we will meet again one day.
We will meet again one day. Yeah, let's say it that way.
Yes.
And I think I'll read this one since you and I talked about our parents earlier today. And so this is in honor of parents and story for closing. And best wishes to Spokane and everyone around there. Storyteller, where is the door to the story? Is the door left open? When he sat by our beds, the days rushed past like water. Driftwood, bricks, heavy cargoes disappearing downstream. No matter, no matter. Even the trees outside our screens tipped their cooling leaves to listen. We swam so easily to the stone village, women in thick dresses, men with smoky breath, sat around the fire, pitching in our own twigs. The world curled around us, sizzled and popped. We dropped our troubles into the lap of the storyteller, and they turned into someone else's. Peace to all. Thank you.
Peace to you as well, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us here in Spokane tonight from such a long distance. And I hope we get to see you on our campus someday soon.
Thank you, Gwen. It was my honor.
Have a lovely evening.
You too.